afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Bayou Bets for Thursday, August the 11th. I'm Zach Ewing with Spencer, the Guru Urquhart, live here from the Baton Rouge studio. Slightly backlit, but we can still see him okay. And Jim Derry. We were all here in Baton Rouge today for a photo shoot, the results of which, in a word, are epic.
That's what you want to call it? Epic?
I mean, I'm not saying if it's epically good or epically bad, but you will see it in the Advocate and Times-Picayune tomorrow morning and then more throughout the whole season. So let me just say.
Hey, I liked it.
Too bad it's not crawfish season. They could align their trays with that.
Yeah, exactly. Save it for the springtime, baby. It's good.
Did you get a haircut since we met?
Who, me?
Yeah. Did you get
I got a haircut yesterday, but it was cut this morning.
Okay. Didn't know you had a freshly mown head. Okay.
Yeah.
I missed it. Let's get to business.
Yeah, they get fresh for the photo shoot.
Yeah.
All right. We are the sports betting show on bet.NOLA.com every Monday and Thursday at 4 o'clock. We're brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook. And if you have not joined the action, we have a special promo code for you. NOLA.com/Caesars. Get your first bet risk-free up to $1,500. Pretty good deal there for new users, and I encourage you to check that out. Our promo code automatically loaded if you go to NOLA.com/Caesars. Guys, the big news of the day in the football world, I don't know if you call it news yet, but it's certainly interesting, I think, to Saints fans in particular, and that is that Tom Brady is absent for the next 10 days from Tampa Bay Buccaneers camp. And on top of that, when head coach Todd Bowles was asked how confident he is or what his level of confidence is that Tom Brady will start in week 1 for the Bucs, he said, pretty high. And that's a quote. Now, whether it was just a slip of the tongue, whether people say pretty this or pretty that when they mean, he's going to start. But that's being digested around the Twitterverse today. Kind of interesting.
Is that the same confidence level that everyone has of Biden running again in 2024?
Yeah, pretty high.
Pretty high. So I mean,
without getting into any of that, because that's.
Oh, I'm not getting into it. I'm just wondering if that's about the same kind of level of confidence we all have.
But we are talking about two old men, and whether they're going to keep working or not. So who knows? Look,
Zach, I will say this about Tom Brady, and we haven't got to Tampa Bay in our NFL previews yet, but I've said it kind of throughout, and we've talked about it a little bit. But look, I know he's Tom Brady. I know he has been at the top of his game throughout his 40s so far, but I think you saw a little tinge last year of kind of what Drew Brees went through at like age 40, 41. You could start to see at the end of the season when these guys get older, they might be great in the beginning of the season, but they start to tail off a little bit. And I think Tom Brady began to tail off just a little bit there at the end of the season. I think that was the first little notice that something's going on. So, but there may be things behind the scenes that we don't know, and it'll be interesting to find out. But you're already too late to jump on this. You might be too late to jump on the Saints bandwagon. I don't know.
Yeah, and there's more reports coming out that are sort of trying to mitigate this, like, hey, maybe he just had a vacation with Giselle playing because he was retired for a period of weeks, and maybe they planned a vacation, and one of his conditions for coming back was, hey, you've got to give me this week off. I mean, I don't know, but missing an entire week of the preseason, even at his age, is not really a good thing.
Here we go. Already?
Uncle Big Nick.
Well, he's there, baby. Uncle Big Nick is there.
I gave him a sneak preview of our...
Stuart, there's 70 people watching this thing, man. I don't know what you're watching. We'd like more. Go tell your friends. But, we got 66, 68 right now. So, I think it's going to be super interesting to see. The odds have not reacted at all. The NFC South odds are still pretty much where they were a couple days ago. But as you mentioned, Jim, the Saints are getting steam.
Yeah, I mean, they have been for the past 2 months. Like I said, when I got it, they were 5-1 to win the division. Their win total was 7.5. Now their odds to win the division are 3.4 to 1, and you got to pay big juice to get 8. And now in most places they're 8.5. So they're with their win total. So I think if this comes out that there's more to it than this, and I mean, let's get real, though. I mean, what are the chances he makes it through an entire season at age 45 without missing some time or without seeing some diminishing? Spencer, I'd like to get your perspective on the fantasy take. I mean, I know we have doubted him in the past, but I mean, when you get to age 45, at some point, to me, he's a stay away. I'm not going to touch Tom Brady in any fantasy drafts.
Oh yeah, I'll play a little devil's advocate here. I'm not worried about this with Tom Brady. I mean, he's the most experienced QB in the league. I really don't see this week and a half off affecting anything. I think he's just taking a little time off because he has that right. He's done it. He's the GOAT. He knows what he's doing, and he'll be back. As far as him, I agree about your point about the second half. At his age, he could kind of have some fall off there and might not be as strong down the stretch. But as far as the now and like the start of the year and all, I don't see this dragging on and affecting his week 1 status. I think he'll be just fine. And as for his fantasy value, I still think he's a top 10 quarterback. I know he doesn't offer any rushing, but in that offense with those weapons, I still think he's good for 4,500 plus yards.
Here's a bold prediction, Zach. And they can go ahead and laugh at me all they want. Going into the season, if I had to draft one of two, I'd take Jameis over Tom Brady.
Wow. That is. We shall
I
see.
wish I could say that, but there's no way I could do that.
Don't want
we
any
shall
part
see
of
how
it.
that stacks up. The Bucs, by the way, still by far the biggest division favorite at minus 300. The Bills, I think, are next closest at minus 230. But the Bucs do have to deal with this, the jinx from Uncle Big Nick. Although
that's not
your bets don't seem to lose very much, Nick.
No,
so I don't know.
He's only betting the Saints that way. If the Saints win the division and all the crap he's going to have to hear, he at least gets something out of it. I mean, I know what he's doing. I mean, same reason why I want to bet the 49ers.
David asked who's starting Saturday. That's the Saints' first preseason game. They're playing at Houston. Line is down to 1, by the way. I imagine Andy Dalton gets a series, guys. We know Jameis Winston's not going to play, but it's going to be an awful lot of Ian Book.
Yeah, I would think Andy Dalton. Yeah, Spence. I think Andy Dalton's going to probably get more than a series. I would think this Jameis isn't available. He'd probably get more like 2 or 3 because you don't want to wear Ian Book out. But, Dalton, the Red Rifle's going to play quite a bit.
Has ever been uttered. You don't want to wear Ian Book out.
He's going to play a lot in the preseason. I can tell you that right now, a whole lot.
Well, yeah, he's going to have to. He's got a lot to prove. I mean, he looked so green last year. He looked like he should have still been in college. He looked like he had no business being on an NFL field. I know it was bad circumstances, but I mean, he couldn't have looked any worse than he looked. He made Trevor Siemian look good.
No,
I know you hate Siemian, Jim, but come on
no,
now. Siemian was much better than Book. That's how bad Book was last year. So hopefully he's a lot better.
Book played behind the third-string offensive line, first of all, but second of all, Spencer, he wasn't green. He was black and blue.
If that is true.
Yeah, he was green going in, black and blue
black and blue coming out. Exactly. You're 100% right.
David, I assume you're talking about Andy Dalton, the new quarterback. And look, I think he's one of the best backups in the league. You don't want to have to play him a lot. But if things go awry injury-wise like they did last year, you feel a heck of a lot. I know Jim feels a heck of a lot better about Andy Dalton than he does about
I?
And I think that what he may have been referencing was that USFL quarterback that was recently picked up. Well, I forgot his name. The Saints recently picked up a USFL, one of the USFL guys, I think.
It wasn't Kyle Sloter because he's playing for the
right,
Giants.
right, yeah. I saw him on the
Hall of Fame game.
Right, yeah. Who was his name? Yeah, it was
We'll let Spencer look that up.
KJ Costello. From the Philadelphia Stars.
Yeah,
from
the Stars. Okay.
Yeah. He'll probably play at the end.
He took over for Shea Patterson, so he won't.
In fact, they just signed KJ Costello today, so he'd be old Stanford quarterback.
He's been in an NFL camp before, I believe.
I think David, that's an insurance policy. Maybe he beats out Ian Book for third string.
I doubt it.
Book would have to really look bad, I feel like, because they actually spent draft capital on Book. But yeah, the fact that they brought this guy in tells me that they want to at least push Book a little bit, because I feel like Dalton's a shoe-in and Jameis obviously. So yeah, that third QB spot though could have a little spiciness there if Costello looks good.
I'm just upset. I think Trevor Siemian signed where else? where did he sign? The Bears?
The Bears. Yeah,
The Bears?
The Bears back up.
Yeah, so, I mean, he'll probably make the Bears. I mean, I'm just upset that he won't be on the waiver wire in case something happens.
Yeah, and if he has to play within the Bears, he's talking about a bad offensive line. That's going to be.
Well, at least Justin Fields doesn't have anything to worry about.
Yeah, Fields at least can scramble. I mean, Simeon. Oh man, yeah. Good luck, Simeon. That's going to get ugly if he has to start.
I don't know if both of you guys are having problems or if it's on my end, but y'all both flamed out. I don't know if the internet's going bad in Baton Rouge.
Everything seems fine here, Jim. I don't know.
Yeah, my connection's good.
Everything seems fine here at Advocate headquarters in Baton Rouge. Yeah. So I think that may be a Jim Derry issue. But what Jim Derry does not have an issue with is getting good guests for his podcast. And before we move on here, I do want to announce that as Jim is like pixelated over there, but he will not be pixelated tomorrow morning on the Datitude feed. And that is because he has recorded an interview with none other than Jim Mora. And he will be on the Datitude podcast tomorrow morning. You can look that up on bet.NOLA.com or on any of your major podcast platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So, Jim, good conversation with Jim Mora, as I think it always is.
It was outstanding, actually. And I don't know what's going on because my bandwidth is pretty high here. So just checked it out. I am thrilled because we had I was expecting 20, 25 minutes, and Jim Mora was great. Went on, and we talked for about 45, 50 minutes. And yes, boys and girls, without even prompting him, he did say, playoffs. He does say it in his voice. It's worth watching. I told him, though, a little spoiler alert, I told him that I was going to lay claim to diddly poo. And he's okay with that.
I usually play my podcast in 1 1/4 speed, so I can't wait to hear playoffs in 1 1/4 speed and diddly poo as well.
He says, who says that? I said, Jim Mora does. He goes, yeah, I guess I did. So he was a great sport. I was kind of I didn't really know how to bring it up, so I tried to go around the side door, and he ended up.
And he left it open for you.
Yeah, he was fine. He went with it. But it's a great conversation about how he got here to New Orleans. We spent some time talking about Sam Mills, obviously, who was put in the Hall of Fame last week, and very deservedly so. And he talks about the story about Sam Mills coming to New Orleans, and spends time talking about Ricky Jackson and the Dome Patrol and how he compares this Saints defense, which obviously I don't think anyone denies that it's the best Saints defense we've had since the Dome Patrol days here in New Orleans. So he talks about that. He compares them. He talks a little about his thoughts of Jameis Winston, which I thought were very candid and very interesting. And so a lot to say, and it's hard to believe Jim Mora is 87 years old. We did not bring that up on the show, but Jim Mora is 87 years old, and you would not know it from either seeing him or listening to him. He still sounds exactly the same as he did 30, 35 years ago.
Jim Mora is 87 years young.
There's no question about that.
That's the truth of that. The other local interesting football story today, by the way, out of LSU camp, was that Jaden Daniels had a much higher percentage of first-team snaps than he had the last time media was allowed him to practice. And so, Brian Kelly says, look, this is still an open competition. Garrett Nussmeier has a slightly sprained ankle. He's going to be out for a couple days. And so that was part of it, why Nussmeier wasn't getting first-team snaps. But it was noticeably Daniels over Miles Brennan. And so it looks like Jaden Daniels may have a leg up on the LSU quarterback competition. I happen to think, guys, it's a good thing to decide this before game week. And that doesn't mean they're going to announce it publicly. It doesn't mean they're going to come out and have a press release or a press conference to say Jaden Daniels is the starter. But to me, it's better to have a couple of weeks of practice knowing who the QB1 is than having the whole team wonder up until game week.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it's probably still pretty even right now. But, yeah, if Daniels is starting to get the leg up, well, then, I would think unless Brennan would really turn up the heat here in the next week or so, then, it'll most likely be Daniels, if he's a new face there. I mean, it's been a while since we've seen Brennan. I know he's been around, but, it'll be interesting to see. But looking like probably will be Daniels, and he probably offers a little more upside.
I actually think if it's not Daniels, Jim, at this point, Nussmeier looks more likely than Brennan.
Yeah, I agree. I've said it for quite a while now. Nothing against Miles Brennan personally. I just don't think he's capable of being an LSU starting quarterback. It's just not. So I think they're better off going either way. And I think Nussmeier showed last year that in his limited time of playing that he's capable. So I don't think it's going to be Miles Brennan.
Yeah, Scott Rabelais, who we're going to have on the show pretty soon, he's our longtime LSU columnist for The Advocate, and he has compared this team quite a few times in his columns to the 2000 team, which was the first year under Nick Saban.
Yeah.
It's the last time that LSU was not ranked in the preseason top 25, and they also had, I think, a three-way quarterback battle that year. And it ended up leading to great things. Obviously, they won the national title 3 years later, then again 7 years later. Saban only stayed for a few years, but he did build what is the modern LSU dynasty, if you can use that term. And so, yeah, this is kind of a reset year. And we looked at those odds. I don't know, anybody's expecting great things from LSU this year. You see the win total is only 7. But this is a reset year. And that, to me, is another reason not to give the job to Miles Brennan and maybe to give it to Nussmeier. Even if Daniel's a little bit better, let Nussmeier have the year as a starter. Let him take his lumps. If you go 7-5, okay, that means next year you're in line, a good recruiting class, you're in line to really take a jump.
I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, that's exactly the way I feel about it. I think if this were if you were coming off of a year where you were, 11-1 or 10-2 or something, and you had that stretch and he played a lot last year and got enough experience, I think you would probably be more inclined to roll with a Miles Brennan. But I agree. I mean, a new coach and coming into I don't want to say it's rebuilding, but it's not far off from that. And there's no reason, again, no offense, unless he wins the job clearly, there's really no reason to start Brennan.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think he's a New Orleans kid, and there's some sentimental feelings there. But if you're trying to win games, I just don't think that's.
Well, he played at St. Stanislaus in Mississippi, but close enough.
Well, I guess I'm thinking of Brennan's restaurant and all that. I mean,
Yeah.
All right, from the current LSU quarterback battle to a past LSU quarterback, it's time to preview the AFC North. That is our division next in our odds previews and fantasy football previews on bet.nola.com. Each day, Tuesday through Friday, we do a different team. This week it's the AFC North. Tuesday was the Baltimore Ravens. Wednesday was Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. But let's talk Ravens first. And I think what you'll see as we look through these teams, expected to be a very, very even battle in the AFC North. I personally like the Ravens to win this division. But you'll see it's going to be close, and it's going to come down to those head-to-head meetings.
We had some interesting conversations this week in our videos with Adam Chernoff of Covers.com, where for the most part, before this week, we only had a couple little disagreements, but we had multiple disagreements in this one. And I found it interesting that I think the biggest disagreement we've had so far was probably with the Baltimore Ravens. And so go with the expert. The expert thinks that the Ravens, he agrees with you, Zach. He thinks that they're going to be much better. I just don't see it. I think they have so many issues. I think they have problems on their offensive line still. I don't trust J.K. Dobbins to be able to come back from the ACL injury and be the guy they need him to be right off. And I don't like their receiving core at all. To me, their top weapon in their receiving core is Mark Andrews. And don't get me wrong, he's a top 3 or 4 tight end in the league, but that's not who you want your top target to be. And beyond that, this has not been John Harbaugh's kind of defense. They were 24th in the league last year. I'm not sure they made enough improvements. I mean, Marcus Williams is their best get in free agency. So you're telling me Marcus Williams is going to make your defense that much better? I don't see it. I think the Ravens are a sub-9 win team. I would take the under. I don't know that I would go big about it. I'm not that convinced because it's a really weird division. We don't know enough about Cleveland. And looking at Cincinnati, if you look at their schedule, and their schedule is so much easier in the front half that they could jump out to a big start and kind of take control of that division. So I went into it kind of thinking that I was going to take either Cleveland or Baltimore, and I changed my mind when I looked at schedules and went through personnel and went deep into it and we spent a lot of time on this, and I think looking at it now, not to spoil Pittsburgh because we won't get them tomorrow, but I think Cincinnati is going to win the division again.
All right. Well, we'll move on to Cincinnati and Cleveland here in a second. Spencer, do you agree with what Jim said, that outside of Mark Andrews, not a lot of weapons here for Lamar Jackson?
Oh, not totally, because I'm really high on Rashad Bateman. I think Bateman's going to really step up and be that number one receiver for him, like the way Hollywood Brown was last year. It's the ones behind him. It's kind of hard to trust Duvernay and Prochet. So, unless one of them would step up, it could hurt the passing game somewhat. But why I'm really high on Baltimore this year and why I think they're going to bounce back and win the division is because of their running game. I think their running game is going to get back to being a lot better than last year, where they had all these veteran retreads. J.K. Dobbins will be back. Gus Bus Edwards will be back. They brought in Mike Davis. The rookie Tyler Beatty. It'll be a completely new backfield, a much better backfield. And with Lamar back there, we know what he can do running wise. So I think they're going to go back more to that power run game that led them to success a couple of years ago. And that, I think that with an improved defense will get them over the top.
Here's the problem with that, though. PFF ranks their offensive line as the 26th best offensive line in the league. And you can look at skill players all you want. You can have Derrick Henry back there, but if there aren't holes to get him through, it doesn't make a difference. Lamar Jackson's going to be running for his life again. I don't disagree with you that J.K. Dobbins can be a fantastic back, and I think Gus Edwards is a great number two. So I agree with you that they have talent in the backfield, and obviously no one runs the football from the quarterback position better than Lamar Jackson, period. And he can escape even with a bad offensive line. And they were still 8th in the league with the line that they had last year. But it didn't get better. These guys are older. They didn't shore up anything. And so when you're talking about thinking of it from a fantasy football perspective, I think too many times we don't think about things like offensive line, and you also don't think about the defensive lines they're going to have to go up against in this AFC. And to me, Pittsburgh and Cleveland have two of the best defensive lines in the NFL, and Cincinnati's isn't bad either. So, it's not like they're, that's 6 games right there that they got to go up against some really tough competition. So that's what worries me most about the Ravens. Not so much that they don't have talent, because again, Dobbins is fantastic, but you talk about their receivers, and you're talking about Lamar Jackson, who is a 60% passer. I can't buy him as far as from a win total perspective.
Yeah, I look, this is the division of T.J. Watt and Myles Garrett in Cleveland. So you're going up against, and by the way, Trey Hendrickson had a great year for Cincinnati, the former center.
Yeah, he sure did.
So there are some elite defensive linemen in this position. So that can be a problem. Kyle asked Baltimore. I believe they drafted a center in the first round.
Yes.
Tyler Lindenbaum.
Yeah, Linderbaum. Yeah, they made some reinforcements to that O-line. That O-line should be better, as well as their secondary last year was horrible. But, they signed Marcus Williams. Then they also drafted the stud safety from Notre Dame, Kyle Hamilton. So I definitely think they'll be better in the spots where they were weak last year. And even last year, with them being weak, they still won 8 or 9 games, something like that, even though they lost. They were injured, like Lamar got hurt, a bunch of other guys that had no running back. So to me, that tells me they're a nice bounce back candidate.
That's exactly it. I see him as a bounce back candidate. And by the way, the Bengals, I think the Bengals will be competitive. Let's move on to them. I've said since the Super Bowl ended last year, I'm fading Cincinnati. Their numbers are honestly a little bit higher than I thought they would be. I thought they would get more steam just based on what they did in the playoffs last year. But I think people have kind of got smart to the idea that just because you got hot in the month of January and made a playoff run does not necessarily translate to the next season. Now, they're very close to Baltimore in the odds. Baltimore's plus 155 to win the North. They're plus 180. Their Super Bowl odds are the same. Their odds to make the playoffs are almost the same. Their win total is the same. So this is expected to be a neck-and-neck race. One thing I'll say, though, Jim, and I know you like to look at the schedules as you look at win totals, Bengals have to play the first-place schedule this year. The Ravens get the second-place schedule. So that is one factor as well.
It is, but, when you're talking about last year's records, it looks tougher maybe than it really is. But the opposite of Baltimore, would the Bengals improve their biggest trouble, obviously, was their offensive line. There's zero question that was the Bengals' biggest trouble. they have shored up their line immensely, especially on the right, from center to the right side. Ted Karras from New England, Alex Kappa at right guard from the Bucs, Lyle Collins from Dallas. They now have a ranking of 9 in their offensive line, which is incredible that they could have jumped that high. And so you talk about their skill players, and Joe Mixon he's a dynamic back. And Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd is way better than anything the Ravens have. And when you talk about their schedule, it opens up with Steelers, Cowboys, Jets, Dolphins, big game against the Ravens in week 5. And then after the Saints in week 6, they get the Falcons. We don't know if Deshaun Watson's going to be back by Halloween, Browns in week 8, and Carolina in week 9. So that to me looks like a schedule that Cincinnati could open up the season easily, go 7-2. And if they do that, I think the Ravens are going to have a tough time because they have a stretch weeks 5 through 8 where their schedule is very, very tough and very unlikely they're going to get through that going 7-2. So if the Ravens are somewhere around 5-4, 4-5, and the Bengals have a 2-3 game lead by bye week time, I just don't see the Ravens being able to catch them.
One more comment from Kyle here about Baltimore. And this is interesting. This is similar to what Steve Tasker was saying last week to us, or on Monday, I should say, that Baltimore's a little bit different to defend than most of the other teams in the league. And so they can be tricky. But, again, last year they had trouble. And to me, I kind of frame this division, Spencer, as like, okay, it's a story of quarterbacks. Who's Pittsburgh going to pick? And we're not going to get to Pittsburgh today because y'all are previewing them tomorrow. We'll talk about it Monday. But Cleveland, the Deshaun Watson situation, how does that resolve itself? Baltimore, can Lamar Jackson bounce back? And then here in Cincinnati, maybe the biggest one of them all is, can Joe Burrow elevate his game that much more and go from certainly productive quarterback, good fantasy quarterback, to MVP level discussion? Because that may be the next frontier for him. And if he can do that, then, yeah, the Bengals are going to win this division.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the Joe Burrow versus Lamar Jackson show this year in that division, because I don't see Deshaun Watson getting to play. I mean, the way it's looking like he's probably going to get he's going to be done, suspended all this season, which the Browns kind of braced for, with this contract this year being very low, to where I think they're going to either go with Brissett or try to get a veteran like Jimmy Garoppolo. So even if they get Garoppolo, I don't see him being able to get them up there with the, Ravens or Bengals. So I think Burrow definitely improved some. I'm just a little worried, though, with the Bengals, I'm a little worried about their defense, honestly. I think their defense is solid, but they have Jesse Bates, their star safety, is holding out right now. And I feel like their defense was played a little over its head last year, especially down the stretch. Their secondary is still a bit of an issue. Eli Apple still a starting cornerback. That is not ideal. I definitely see the Bengals. I still think they'll be solid on defense because of their front, but their secondary still got issues. And then Baltimore really improved their secondary. So I'm a little skeptical there. I don't think it'll be Burrow's fault. I like Burrow to put up even better numbers this year. But, the reason they went to the Super Bowl last year had more to do with their defense. Not that Burrow was bad, but, it was their defense that was so great down the stretch.
Yes, this is what I'm talking about is a little bit of, Cincinnati has the bandwagon, but some of it is rightfully so. I mean, they do have a lot of talent. And as Jim said, they improved in the areas where they were a little bit deficient. The question mark in the league, of course, in the division is the Cleveland Browns, Deshaun Watson. And they recommended a 6-game suspension. Honestly, it's obvious the NFL wants more than that because they haven't accepted it yet. They're trying to appeal it. And we see here their win total and their playoff odds are off. They're off the board. Nobody really wants to touch them. Any value in 3-1 to win the AFC North if he is only suspended for 6 games? Jim, what do you think?
He's not going to be. It's going to be more than 6 games. I think that what's going to end up happening, and I think it's pretty obvious. I would be willing to bet a good bit that the NFL, the NFLPA, and Deshaun Watson's agent are in talks right now about a settlement. I don't think this is ever going to get to the arbiter. I think they're going to settle before it gets that far. So it's going to be more than 6. What are they willing to settle on? My guess is 10-ish. But still, if you talk about missing 10 games of the season, that does affect you. But I will say this, and Adam Chernoff had a great point. Again, if you haven't checked out today's video, today might be the most informative one that we've had so far, especially from Adam in the sharpest perspective on Cleveland. And he makes a point, because if it's kind of like, here, let's dangle the carrot. If there's no Deshaun Watson, automatically we think Cleveland stinks. Well, I mean, look at what's around Cleveland. I mean, if Deshaun Watson does play, this could end up being the best team in the NFL. Because if you go around and look at what they have a great offensive line, maybe the best in football. That's how good their offensive line is. And I talk a lot about offensive lines because it really does generate what you're looking at as far as bets go. It makes a huge difference. The Saints, are a perfect example. I mean, all the shuffles they had last year, it obviously affected them, and it affected quarterback rotation and how they had to keep going in and out there. But, I mean, you talk about Nick Chubb, you talk about Kareem Hunt, you even talk about Dearness Jackson. I mean, they're as deep at running back as anybody. They're now solid at wide receiver with Amari Cooper there. Donovan Peoples-Jones is a great wide receiver, I think. And their defense is probably top 5, top 6. So Adam says they're built to win even without. My biggest concern is not so much that they have the talent. My biggest concern with Cleveland is that how much of this circus is going to affect how they play. And these players and Kevin Stefanski are going to be continually asked, even if it's announced Deshaun Watson is out for 10 or 12 games, it doesn't make a difference. His name is going to come up every week. They're going to get sick and tired of it. It's going to affect morale. And at some point, I mean, you got to wonder if that affects their play. We'll find out. Cleveland has a very easy schedule to start the season as well. They could easily be 4-1 or so by that point. So, yeah, if there's any value at all, I wouldn't touch conference or Super Bowl at all. If I was going to bet any positive thing for the Browns, it would be the 3-1 to win the division. I don't think there's anything else that you can bet with the Browns because you already missed the train. That's no value on Super Bowl or win the AFC, in my opinion.
By the way, this AFC North is the AFC division that the Saints match up with this year. They have Baltimore and Cincinnati at the Dome. They are at Cleveland and Pittsburgh.
And they don't play Cleveland until the second to last game of the year. So if Deshaun Watson is not suspended for the year, he will play in that game.
So here are the odds for all 4 teams. Again, Pittsburgh will be previewed live on bet.NOLA.com tomorrow, and then we'll talk about it on Monday's edition of Bayou Bets. But yeah, it's a close race. I mean, I think if Deshaun Watson, once we find the suspension, if it's let's say eight games, that's half the season, a little less than half the season. If it's 10 games, that number is not going to change too much, I don't think. This is sort of a 3-team race, and Pittsburgh, look, you never count on a Mike Tomlin coach team. We'll talk more about that on Monday, but certainly another division with all 4 teams are live.
Can you put Kyle's last comment on the screen? I think it's it's interesting. I don't agree with him, but it's an interesting comment and an interesting take. He says if he's Watson, he'll hold out for arbitration. Let me tell you something. You're never that is the last option. The only way you hold out for an arbiter to make a decision is if the NFL is unreasonable and says we want the whole season or nothing. Then you have nothing to lose and go for it. Otherwise, if you can settle, you're going to settle. Especially, he would take tomorrow 8 games. If the NFL is willing to do 8, then he would do that tomorrow. So my guess is they're probably somewhere between 10 and 12, but that is the last resort. Any lawyer will tell you that. Both sides, the lawyers will tell you that. Neither one of them wants to go to the arbiter, but they'll do it if they can't come to an agreement.
Yeah, arbitration drags the process out. Spencer, I think we talked about this in the fantasy roundup on Tuesday. I know as a fantasy player, you tend to be somewhat risk averse, so I take it that you would not be selecting Watson at any point in fantasy football.
Oh, no. Yeah, no, definitely not us. They would risk. I like to take my risks more with with rookies and younger players. When it comes to aging vets, I'd rather be a year ahead rather than a year late as far as I'd rather if they have one more year. Well, I know he's not old, but it's just one of those situations that I'm just not touching. A lot of times I notice with these suspension type situations, it can get ugly. And even with, like I mentioned in the preview yesterday, or today, even with even if he comes back, I don't really like him in Cleveland, being that it's a run-first offense. And outside of Amari Cooper, I don't really like their receivers. Like, they don't really – I know you said you like Peoples-Jones, but I honestly not a huge fan of his. He's very up and down. And then the rookie David Bell maybe could be something, but I don't know. It's a new system. He'll be coming in later in the year while most teams have already up to speed. He'll just be getting his feet wet to be a new system. I'd rather not mess with it.
I'll make you boys a bet right now, and we can decide on the terms later. I bet Cleveland finishes with a better record than the Ravens.
Ooh. Yeah,
I'll take that side.
If you're giving me even odds, I'm taking it. But
we'll do even odds. We'll
see what the we'll decide the stakes later. How's that?
Only thing is, if it's a tie, I win. At even odds. If you get an even odds, a tie, I win.
We'll talk about that offline. We might have something to announce on Monday as far as that goes. A couple things about our plans here at bet.nola.com. And Jerry, I do see your comments there. We're ready for Saints football too.
Thank you for joining us every week, Jerry. We appreciate it. I know you're a regular, and we love regulars.
We do love regulars. We are, even though it's the preseason. I'm going to make y'all do it. We're going to make a pick on the preseason game Saturday before we go. Now, Kyle would like that too. So we'll have.
Kyle, you're in. Listen, you can get in.
We talked about LSU earlier. Here are some of our plans. We are going to be live from outside the Dome on September the 4th before the LSU-Florida State season opener. Look for us in Champion Square. If you're going to the game, we're going to try to get that show on the PA so you can hear us. I'm going to try to talk to Scott Rabelais, some of the other advocate writers, maybe get a Florida State writer on the show, dissect that game, kind of do a college game day type atmosphere, and get you all ready for the game. So we've got that coming. NFL, James Carville is back to make his picks. We're gearing up for a big NFL season. Uncle Big Nick is the regular. You're the regular.
Well, and I can't answer if he's regular. He's going to have to answer that question.
Lord,
it's his own problem.
So, okay, we just went off the rails. I almost made it to the end of the show, but not quite. So that's what we have coming up. Also, we're planning some other fun stuff for NFL contests, fantasy football league, perhaps. Stay tuned. Keep it locked. Every Monday and Thursday at 4 o'clock, we have Bayou Bets. Every Tuesday with a fantasy roundup at 2 o'clock. And then Jim's got Datitude twice a week now. Once the season starts, it'll be 3 times a week. And
once a week, right? It's once a week, right?
Oh, it's just once a week
until I'm finished with NFL team previews. Then we'll advance.
And next week we're going to the AFC North.
Yes.
And
next week is the
NFC North.
And so we'll talk about the Minnesota Vikings, whom the Saints play in London this year. Might have some special coverage to go with that game as well. We got lots to go on. We got lots.
We're going to London.
If anyone goes to London, it'll be the guy who has a place to stay, which would be me.
Good, because I don't want to go to London.
So that's where that's headed, if it's headed that way. But let's talk some preseason football. Saturday night, the Saints open up in Houston. We talked about who might start at quarterback. We know Jameis Winston's not going to play. I expect Andy Dalton to play a little bit. They certainly don't want to get him hurt with Jameis already banged up, so I don't think he'll play a lot. It'll be a lot of Ian Book. Maybe we'll even see some KJ Costello. I think we probably will in the second half. This line's kind of ticked down from 2 to 1.5 now. Saints -1. How do you bet this game? I know a lot of preseason games you can find an edge. This one, it's hard to find the information as far as who's going to play on either side.
I like the under. I wouldn't touch the line. I mean, if I'm taking anything, I love preseason unders anyway, and I know this is super low, but I think the Saints obviously are going to be as vanilla as they possibly can be. They're not going to take a chance on anybody getting hurt. You're not going to see any. I think very few starters are going to play in this game. They're certainly not going to play more than a series or two. They don't care. The Saints have never cared about preseason. They don't care if they're 0-3. It doesn't make a difference to them. And so I think you're going to see a lot of defense, and really the Texans kind of are the same way. So I like the under 33. I think it's going to be a boring game. Preseason is never all that fun to me anyway, and I think you're looking at like 13-6.
Okay, 13-6 who?
I mean, you're making me pick a team.
I'm making you pick a team.
Okay, I'll take Houston. I don't think the Saints care.
I was going to say Houston 16, Saints 14. So I'm with you on the under.
Saints
and I'm
don't care.
Houston Yeah, I don't think they do. I mean, honestly, the Texans if any team plays its starters for a little bit longer, it'll be Houston.
Agreed.
Because they've got more spots where there are position battles and things like that. The Saints, quite frankly, this is a waste of time for 85% of their roster, maybe more. So they're just going to get through it. Spencer, preseason game number 1, who you taking?
Yeah, I have to agree with y'all on this one. I'm going with the Texans because they just have a lot more to play for here as far as they're just such a young team, have a lot of new faces in there, and they're just going to be – I think they're going to just be trying a lot harder as far as there's going to be more guys like fighting for roster spots. So there's more uncertainty throughout their roster. With a Saints roster, at least the starters are pretty well set. I mean, I'm not saying they're going to – like the backups, of course, are going to try, but I just feel like the Texans, like, they just have like more guys that would probably be a little hungrier for this, and just they'll probably. I bet Davis Mills probably play a few series and
quite a bit.
Yeah, so if I had to play something here, I think it might end up the over could maybe hit. Actually, I'm not going to play it over under. I'll probably, if I had to play something, I'd take the Texans -1.
So final score, Spencer?
I'm gonna say Texans 24, Saints 17.
All right, so a little higher scoring. So we will see what happens 7 o'clock Saturday night. Some preseason action on tonight. I believe the Giants are playing the Patriots and the Ravens.
To Kyle's point, Zach, that last comment about the Saints depth, that doesn't matter. They don't care. I mean, they're out there running vanilla schemes. The depth, the fact that the Saints have more depth than the Texans, it doesn't make a difference in preseason. We've seen. I think the Saints team that won the Super Bowl was terrible in the preseason. They either went 0-4 or 1-3, something like that. I mean, it doesn't make a difference. They don't run any kind of schemes. They're looking to see how certain players do in one-on-one coverage and running things they wouldn't normally run and just looking at things.
And the other part of that is, are the Saints deeper? Yes, I think they unquestionably are. But
there's no question.
if they're playing their third string 50% of their game, the second string 40%, and the first string 10%, where Houston, that's skewed more to 20% first string, 40% second string. You know what I'm saying? Like you may be getting a lot of 2s on 3s, and the Saints are that much deeper. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. It's preseason. It can be difficult to predict if you don't know what you're looking at. 2 other preseason games tonight as week 1 of the NFL preseason gets going. Giants -3 at New England, and the Titans are +3 at Baltimore. That's the most exciting thing. Baltimore's riding a 20-game preseason win streak. Can they keep it going?
The Ravens care. I mean, and we talked about it with
Harbaugh thing.
Adam Chernoff. If there's anything, in fact, I think it was off the air when I was talking to him about it, but about preseason, the only thing you know about preseason is Baltimore gives a damn. So bet Baltimore. If you bet them every time, you're going to win way more times than not because Harbaugh cares about preseason.
Yeah,
I don't know why, but he does.
3 points a pretty big line in a preseason game, quite honestly. So, in the Giants and Ravens both favored by 3 tonight. What I'll be watching is what Uncle Big Nick will be watching, the Field of Dreams game. Forget NFL preseason. I love watching guys hit homers into cornfields. I don't know what it is. It just screams Americana, and I'm here for it. 2 bad teams, Cubs and Reds, -110 either side. Take your pick.
I love players running out of corn and running into corn. It's a little corny, but it's good.
Love it. Love it.
We'll be
All
watching.
right, final thoughts, guys. Jim.
Excited for Datitude. I mean, I was Jim Mora when I started working at the Times-Picayune to show my age back in 1990. Yeah, that's right. I started in 1990. Jim Mora was still, in fact, not only still, he was like basically right in the middle of his reign here in New Orleans as the Saints head coach. And, he got a bad rap for being kind of we talk about this as well. He got kind of a bad rap for being a guy who was a little mean to the media sometimes. And the fact is he just didn't like dumb questions. I mean, he was a pretty nice guy and definitely an approachable kind of guy. And just talking to him and hearing him just go on, I mean, it wasn't anything like in his coaching days. He would give sometimes these short answers and move on. And I'd ask him a question. And he'd go on for 2-3 minutes. And it was pretty cool to hear some of the things he talked about and reminiscing with him. And tomorrow we're going to call tomorrow Reminiscing Friday as my monologue will also be reminiscing just a little bit.
Did you ask him about Josh Stowers?
I did not.
Stowers was the star of the day for the Saints. Kansas City Chiefs cut Stowers from camp last week.
I did not ask him about
so
Josh
many classic
Stowers.
Jim Mora videos out there. I'm excited for that as well.
And he talks about that part of it for about 5 to 7 minutes. And again, I didn't know how to approach it, so I just kind of like see if he'd go in the side door. And boy, he went in and took off running with it. And he said it's made him some money. I didn't know it made him money, but
That's
I guess
fantastic.
it did.
Go Jim Mora. Good for you. Spencer, your final thought.
Just started looking ahead at season long props. Just take a look at that and seeing where the values are with the different yardage and even touchdown props. I started with quarterbacks to see all about the passing yards, passing touchdowns, and there are values to be had. I'm not going to give them away just yet. We're going to have probably some write-ups on that, and we'll be talking about it Tuesday on the fantasy roundup. But yeah, just wanted to give a little preview into that, y'all. These season long props. They're time to get them now, because once preseason and hype starts up right before it, they're gonna shift some. So this is gonna be a time to really get some bargains.
Absolutely true. Datitude hits podcast platforms tomorrow morning. We're back with you with the next Bayou Bets live at 4:00 on Monday. Until then, for Jim and Spencer, I'm Zach Ewing. Thanks for watching.